Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back to Social Studies. So today we're going to kind of wrap up what we started yesterday. We've been talking a lot about Veterans Day. And yesterday we read In Flanders Fields. So we talked about some things about it. And today we're going to compare it to a nonfiction book. So we're comparing a poem to a nonfiction resource. So we said that it was a place where war happened. Poppies, what are those? And we looked them up, and they are flowers, and they're very commonly worn on those days. It's a place where people are buried, gives people hope, and tells people to keep going. So today, we're going to focus on our nonfiction book, World War I, Armistice Day. Now, everybody in the classroom has a copy, so if you want to open it up, we're actually just going to be on pages 12 and 13, and then we have another set of pages. So this is the day the armistice was signed. At 5 o'clock on the morning of November 11th, 1918, a group of high-ranking German politicians and military officers entered a railroad car in the forest of Compiègne. They were met by delegates from the countries with which they had been at war. 3 days earlier, the French, British, and Americans had prepared an armistice document, which they demanded the Germans accept within 3 days. What is armistice? Very nice. So if we go to the back, I'm glad somebody saw that it was put in bold letters. So armistice, an agreement during a war to stop fighting. So they made an agreement, okay? Inside the train car, the Germans signed the surrender document put before them. The document signaled that the war would stop in 6 hours at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. World War I, fought between 1914 and 1918, was the first truly international war. Although much of the fighting took place on the fields of northern France and Belgium, many nations from around the world had been drawn into it. It was a modern war, a war fought with new weapons, a war that claimed the lives of millions of people, a war that changed the map of Western Europe. It was, so people said, the war to end all wars. So we're going to talk about this page first that we just read. Can somebody tell me something that we learned? Okay, so what happened? Very nice. The 11th hour, 11th day of the 11th month. What else? Okay, we had millions lost their lives. Very nice. Is there anything we could start to put in the center? Okay, so it's about a war. So remember, you should be filling yours out while I'm filling mine out as well. Anything else about that? What was that word that we had to look up? Armistice. And what was it? It was an agreement. Very nice. All right. So that was the first page. We're going to look at one more page. So if you flip to the back of your book, we're going to the aftermath of the war. Okay. So yes, you guys have peer read the rest of the book, but we're going to kind of just look at these pages. Many treaties were signed after the war had ended, and once they had all been agreed to, the map of Europe had been redrawn. In 1919, Germany was forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles. This said that the German army could have no more than 100,000 troops, that Germany had to pay money to France and Belgium for the damage it caused, and that Germany's borders were to be changed. Land taken from France in 1817 was to be given back, and Belgium and Denmark were given land near them. Germans thought the treaty was harsh and unfair. Britain and France, on the other hand, thought that the Germans had gotten off lightly. So then we're going to go to the memorials built. Thousands of war memorials were built across Europe, in villages and cities, and on battlefields themselves. These recorded the names of those who gave their lives for their country. Many fallen soldiers were buried in cemeteries close to the battlefields that claimed their young lives. Some whose bodies were never found are remembered at their country's grave of the unknown soldier in London, Paris, Brussels, and in Arlington, Virginia. On Veterans Day every year, people all over the world remember them. So, what can we put from that one? There was a really big one in the way in something or where they're buried. Okay, so we have Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Now, when reading this and when reading Flanders Fields, how do you guys feel? Is there a feeling that we can put in the middle? Okay, I heard devastation. Sorrow. We just heard somebody say hope. So we feel all these things. And I think, you know, the poem makes us feel a little bit more of those things. But this did too, didn't it? Because it's talking about a very important event in history. What else can we talk about from that section that we just read? Okay, so many treaties were signed. Let's do one more thing. What else? So if we're looking at that, and I'm going to point you to the right paragraph. What about that last paragraph? Okay, so memorials were built. So not only do we have the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers, we have a bunch of memorials. So the other day we actually watched a video on the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. And when watching that, we learned a lot about it. We learned that every day on Veterans Day, there's a wreath placed. Soldiers that are never found, their names, they're buried there significantly. So what do you think memorials would be? Do you think this is a memorial? Okay. We have a bunch of memorials in Washington, D.C. Arlington, Virginia is actually a military cemetery. So we have a lot of memorials to kind of commemorate all that happened on this day. Now, this is World War I. So they said it was the war to end all wars. Did that really happen? No, it didn't. So that is something that we have to remember. World War I was not our first World War. It was not our last one. It was our first one. So we have to remember that all of this stuff happened in just the first one. Now, this says Armistice Day. What do we call Armistice Day now? So this book is labeled World War I, Armistice Day. What do we call it now, though? Okay, we call it Veterans Day. Very nice. So if I take our piece of paper and flip it over, we're going to just jot some things down that we do to celebrate Veterans Day. And this can be what you do at home. This can be the project you guys did in ELA the other day. This can be just a few things on how we celebrate it. How do we celebrate Veterans Day? Okay, we have an assembly where we invite veterans. What else? Okay, we might have parades. What else would we have? There we go. We might send thank you notes. Glad somebody remembered what we did in ELA. That's the big one I was looking for. We pay our respects. So this was a big thing that happened. And then from there, we've had a lot of other wars. So Veterans Day is a day for us to pay our respects to those people that have fought in those wars, right? So we can have an assembly, which we do every year. You might have a parade. We sent thank you notes in ELA class the other day, right? So, what can we learn from those two things that we've read in Flanders Fields and from the book that you guys have been reading this week? What are some things that we can learn? Okay, that it was a really significant war. What else? That people gave their lives. Very nice. Now, raise your hand if you have a veteran in your family. I know there's probably a lot of you, since, you know, we do have a lot of kids from Fort Leavenworth. Yeah, there's a lot of us. I have my dad and my father-in-law and my grandparents and my cousin. So we have a lot of veterans. So we pay our respects to them and thank them for putting their lives on the line. So in a minute, we're going to watch a video that kind of explains Veterans Day. But right now, what I want you guys to do is, if your Venn diagram isn't finished, I'll make sure to flip this over in a second. What I want you to do is get onto the Google Classroom. You're going to go and you're going to fill out the exit ticket. Now, the exit ticket's going to look familiar. It's just like the pre-quiz you took at the beginning of the week before we started all this on Veterans Day. So go ahead and get on Google Classroom. You're going to start that, and then we will watch that finish up video.